An age ago, the beating heart of our people was a king who knew only victory. He wanted nothing more than an honorable death on the battlefield. Yet, none could match him, and so he wandered the earth, becoming lost in time and tide. Then we too lost our honest purpose, while silk-clad men sat upon the throne. But tremble now, all cities that lay under the stars, for out of the shadows and mists of the land of promise, our courage has been rekindled, our heart has returned, and the world will burn.
All right. How's everybody doing tonight? If somebody could give me a shout out in the comments just to make sure you can hear me, that would be great. Say hello to who's here already. Vaz is here. Michael is here. Manny is here. Let's see. Warren the Archangel. How you doing, Warren? Let's see who else we got here. Samuel is here. And Michael says he can hear. Great. So, it's been a while since we've done a Making Comics Fun again because we had Sound Engravers here as well. We've had 2 weeks worth of comic book team up on my channel because we wanted to do some closeout streams for a couple of guys who had campaigns going on. And John wanted them on my channel just because we wanted to pump them up just a little bit more because I have a little bit more of a pull than John does with my subscriber base. So we wanted to give those guys a shot in the arm. We did Wolf and Batsy, and then we did, last week was Shadows. The Cull book. What was the name of it? I got to look it up right at the top of my head because I have the background here. Just 1 second. Let's take a look here. Shadow Kingdom, the Shadow Kingdom. Shadow Kingdom. Yes, it is. The Shadow Kingdom. That's what it is. So we did those for the last couple of weeks, but we're back here with the Making Comics Fun again tonight. And I've been chomping at the bit wanting to do this because I wanted to talk about art and just really, I want to go off on a bunch of things about comic book art and sequential art. And you got to take it all with a grain of salt because obviously I'm not an artist. I'm a writer, but that's where I want to start. And we'll start from the beginning. I guess I don't have the links in the description right now for my. I was taken a little bit by surprise today with a stream because I was away for a little while and didn't get to put the links in the description for my graphic novels. But I will do that probably when we're done. So if anybody's listening to this afterwards, links are in the description for my graphic novels. But the point being that I write these graphic novels and I'm not an artist, but the thing is that I don't see myself as so much a writer anymore. I see myself as a sequential artist who doesn't know how to draw. If that makes any sense whatsoever. And again, if anybody is new here, just I'm going to go off of my topic probably for about 20 minutes. So if you have any questions for me about tonight, about anything that I'm doing on my channel, in my books, go ahead and ask them in the comments. Just tag me in them so that I know, or put a question mark after it so I know that you're talking to me, and I will get to them hopefully before the end of the show. So yes, that's kind of the way I think about it, is because I'm a sequential artist, someone who writes sequential art, but I'm a sequential artist who doesn't know how to draw. And I've always had sequential art in my life. And that's why I think of it in those terms. And it's because, well, I'll give you a couple of stories, okay? So I have older brothers, so there were always comics in my life, always. I can never remember a time where there wasn't comics in my life. Let's see if we can put up some nice sequential art in the background. I know this is stuff we've seen over and over again, but who gets sick of Neil Adams, right? I'll upload some new stuff sometime soon, but let's see. We'll put some Neil Adams up in the background. Oh, it's just Batman, but Neil Adams is thrown in there. Anyways, so um, let's see. Go back to my comments. Let's make sure here. Hopefully you can still hear me in the comments because I didn't take myself off of the screen. Anyways, but my point is that comics were always in my life, and not only comics, but and I know this sounds weird because I always criticize people at Marvel right now for saying the exact same kind of thing, but there was sequential art always in my life. Why? And I know this for a fact. One of the earliest memories that I ever have was reading a book, and it's an old book. I mean, it was probably published in the early 70s, late 60s, but it was a Peanuts book, and it was called the Peanuts Dictionary, if I do remember correctly. So this is before I could read, certainly, because what it did was it was teaching basically the ABCs, and it would give a couple of definitions according to each letter. And that would be every page, and it was a fairly big book. It was bigger than a comic book, but they used the old Peanuts sequential art in order to put all of this stuff in the book. So it wasn't like a Peanuts book where you would get today, where it's just a story about these characters. No, it was the actual Peanuts comic strip they were using, and it would explain a couple of things. And I can remember my mother and I reading that, and we were like sitting on floorboards. This is because we had nothing, right? This was a new house, and we had nothing but floorboards. We didn't even have furniture. Mother and father were building the place, so we didn't have a lot, but we had sequential art because we had that book. We had that Peanuts book, which I read over and over and over again. I also had comic books because, as I said, my older brothers always had comic books around, and I think my uncle is where they got them from. He was very much into westerns and war comics, but there was some superhero comics thrown in there as well. And I think my brothers got the superhero bug from those, and then were able to get more superhero comics. But the point is, as I said, sequential art was always in my life as far back as I can remember, because like I said, that was one of my earliest memories, going through that Peanuts book, which had the original Peanuts sequential art from the newspaper in it. And you might not think of the Peanuts as sequential art, but that's what it is. But the thing is, that is for me an indication that even before I knew how to read, and even at a time when I could barely talk, I was looking at sequential art and trying to understand things through sequential art. So, to some extent, my first language is sequential art. It's not English; it's sequential art. So, yeah, when I see things, when I read a novel, and things like that, I take it and in my head, and I don't do this on purpose. It just happens. But sometimes it looks like a movie and plays in the background, but sometimes it's more sequential art, and I put it together like sequential art in my head as I'm reading a novel, and that's what it looks like. It's pictures. I make the picture. So actually doing a novel, which is what I did before a couple of years ago. I say a couple of years ago, probably 10 years ago, when I wrote the manuscript for my novel. It was something I always thought I wanted to do because I always wanted to write. But when I started making comics and graphic novels, no, that's what I wanted to do. That's always what I wanted to do. And I can tell because I just so much enjoy laying out panels and laying out the entire story. Because if anybody got the script for Thomas Valiant #1 and saw what I do to actually write a script, it's a full script. And for every panel, I give at least one line, at the very least minimum, one line of description for what it is. And then, that might continue for a paragraph, depending on how much complexity there's going to be within the panel. And besides that, sometimes about 50 to 75% of the time, I do panel layout for the artist to basically squeeze everything in. So I tell the artist, this is the basic panel layout. I'd say probably more around 50 to 60% of the time. I leave some of that open for the artist to do it himself, because that gets me a better idea of what they're capable of doing by themselves. And I always go back to the older stuff that they've done and say, do it like this, like you did it before. But anyway, my point is that why, if I'm someone who is so enthralled by sequential art, did I never learn how to draw? And that's why I want to talk about the art of art. Now, I notice I said the art of art, not the art of arts, which is a plural at the end with an S, arts, because that would be philosophy. No, art of arts, the art of art itself. Okay, if I go back logically to the definition of art, we'll go back to Aristotle, 400 BC, sorry. He would say that art is the ability to take an idea from your mind and to translate it into external matter. So he would say that shipbuilding is an art, and so is architecture, right? Because you're taking what is basically a blueprint in your brain and you're translating it into exterior matter. So art that you put down on a page is a different variation of this, but that's what art is, and that's the logical definition of art. So the thing is that I think of that as the actual definition of art, and for me, I take that as the given for the definition of art. But again, getting back to the question of if I loved sequential art so much, why didn't I learn how to draw? Well, it's because over and over again, I tried to learn how to draw. And the problem with that, and I mean over and over again, when I was a kid, we'll say grade school, I don't remember how old exactly I was. My mother enrolled me in an art class, and it lasted about 3 classes. And then I said, no, I don't want to do this. And then when I was in high school, I enrolled myself in art class. And again, it lasted 3 or 4 classes. Then I said, no, I don't want to do this. Why? It's because, and this really drives me insane. And again, this is coming from someone who is not an artist, so take this all with a grain of salt. But for me, it was the left-leaning, hippy-dippy people that were trying to teach your art. Now, why? Because was I thinking about, politics back when I was in grade school? No, it was because what they were always trying to tell me was shut down the rational part of your brain. It's the right part of your brain, they would always say. You shut that off and you go with the left side of your brain, which is the creative side of your brain. That's what you're supposed to use when you produce art. And I am here to tell you that's a load of crap. Because for me, I have, over the last couple of years, since I started producing these things for my graphic novels and trying to understand sequential art more and more, and to watch things and watch videos and see artists, how they work and all these kinds of stuff, I've learned something very, very important. I've learned that all those people who tried to teach me art were trying to teach me a bunch of nonsense, because it is not just the left part of your brain. It is the right part of your brain working in tandem with the left part of your brain. And I ran across a video just a couple of weeks ago. And again, this was me just trying to say, why is this person trying to do a tutorial on how to do art? So I went over and I watched it. It was on YouTube. And the first thing the guy said he said, art is not math. And then he took the rest of the 20-minute video to describe how art was math, just after denying that it was math. To me, that is the quintessential thing of what I'm trying to express here. Art is math. So yeah, you can't turn off the right side of your brain. You absolutely cannot turn off the right side of your brain and just use the non-rational part of your brain. And this is the problem, okay? This is why I talk about it as your hippy-dippy kind of people trying to teach art. Why? Because art is math. They're just denying that it's math and then trying to teach you the math in a way that's subjective so that you learn it without knowing that it's math. That's what it is. And it puts this layer of crap on learning how to draw and learning art that is just killing someone like me from ever producing art or ever taking the time to actually, become an artist from a young age. Because quite honestly, you're trying to deny what this bloody thing is to begin with, because art is math. And I want to just tug on that string just for a second. Okay. We can go all the way back again to Aristotle. And what does he talk about? He talks about how something that is beautiful, you have a beautiful piece of art, and he says it has symmetry. That's one of the things he talks about. It has symmetry. Okay, why does the thing have symmetry? Why? Because it's even. And if it's even, you're employing mathematical standards when you're talking about symmetry and talking about a good piece of art. Okay, let's go to things like the Fibonacci equation. Okay, Fibonacci equation is basically an equation that studies the natural patterns that you see within the world. And it's basically, you're able to take it down to an equation, take it back to math and say, the reason why this beautiful piece of nature exists is because it operates according to certain rules. And you can take those rules and you can break them down into math. And this is true. People have done this, taken the Fibonacci equation and applied it to human beings and how we are put together and why we are symmetrical and everything else. And this is the exact thing. You see, you can take math and break it down into math. And that representation that you're using to put it down on a page, that's math. Why do you think that if you go back to Buscema's How to Draw the Marvel Way, and almost every other book that teaches you how to draw, why does everything go back to squares and circles? It's, you got to put everything in squares and circles. Start with squares and you break it down into squares. And then if you get a little bit further ahead, then you break it down into circles. Well, what is squares and circles? Squares and circles, if you're using them, what are you using? You're using geometry. What is geometry? Geometry is math. I'm sorry, it is. So again, here's the thing. That video that I watched where the guy said, art is not math. And then again, as I said, he spent the next 20 minutes talking about how art was math. The whole point is that these people who deny that you have to have a rational standard in order for something to look good, in order for something to be beautiful, in order for something to be balanced and have symmetry. And that's one of the other things this guy in this video denied. He said, there's no such thing as beautiful. There's just beautiful to me, beautiful to you. No, there's beautiful. There is something that is actually a standard of beauty. That's what I'm always talking about. The true, the good, the beautiful. The beautiful is a thing, okay? It exists. It's not just beautiful to me or to you. There might be some things that are beautiful to me and not beautiful to you, but there is beauty as it exists as a standard. And again, you can break it down into mathematical equations and understand it that way as well. And that's the thing. You see, you have these people who deny everything about beauty existing. They want to interpret everything in a how should I put this? In a non-rational way. They want to interpret everything in a subjective way. I guess the best way to put it would be not an objective way, because if you're saying beauty exists, you're saying it exists objectively, but they're saying everything is subjective. Everything is according to what I think or what I feel or what I know. That's it. So it is their basic mindset that everything is subjective. Therefore, I'm producing art. I must say it's subjective. Then I must teach other people how to actually learn math in a, well, not in a subjective way, but through a subjective lens. That's what all these art teachers were trying to do with me. They're saying, no, learn how to do this mathematical equation subjectively. And that's just insane. That's nonsense. And that's why, again, you have these people not understanding, because this is the only way that most people teach art over and over again for a long time now. And this layer of crap, this layer of subjective crap that gets put onto the analysis of how to do things, it kills the ability of people to actually produce art. And it certainly kills the ability of people to do it in a, we'll say, conservative way, in a traditional way, in a lover of beauty exists in an objective way. I remember interviewing Clifton Duncan. This was probably about a year and a half ago, maybe 2 years ago now. And he said, one of the things that I severely disagree with Clinton about is, he said, people want to have what they call conservative art now. And he said, that sounds like the most boring thing in the world. And I would say, no, that's not the most boring thing in the world. Look at the Sistine Chapel. That is conservative art. Why? Because it's symmetrical. Why? Because it is beautiful in a way that can be broken down into mathematical equations, right? So now, having said that, here's the thing. Okay, not everything that we perceive as human beings can be broken down into that mathematical equation and have it make sense on a page. It just can't. And that's one of the things about one of the things I wanted to talk about here about having art and making art. I'm all about trying to learn it in a way that is, yes, you break it down into squares, you break it down into circles. This is geometry. Use that geometry. Use the equations for how big something is, and then put in your perspective, everything like that. That's all math. And I would say, yeah, you have to understand that. And if you can understand that by studying art to begin with, then you're already leaps and bounds ahead of other people. But there are certain ways that the human eye doesn't perceive things correctly. Now, some examples of this is you go back to as far as the Parthenon, okay? The Parthenon was built in a way where it looks like it's absolutely true in all, no, it looks like it's absolutely straight, okay? I have to correct myself. Looks like it's absolutely straight because there's a difference between straight and true. Because if you go back to, if I remember correctly, my carpentry, right? Straight is actually straight. Okay, you put a level on it, it's straight. True means it looks straight. It might not be straight, but it looks straight. So there's the difference between straight and there's a difference and between true. So the Parthenon is built in a true form. Okay, that is to say, they wanted everyone to look at this miraculous temple and say, that is perfectly done. Those pillars that make up the temple, they look exactly right going up and down. Okay. And perpendicular to the floor, everything. But if you go there and actually measure everything, they're not. They're true. That is to say, they're built in a way that basically tricks the human eye into thinking that they're absolutely straight. And the only way they can do that is to build it in a way that wasn't absolutely straight. Okay. And the same works when you're talking about sequential art. I can't remember. I always say this, but I should look it up. There was one of the artists, I think it might have been Alex Toth. I'm not entirely sure. He came up with a equation for how comic book characters, they weren't comic book characters back then, they were comic strip characters, were supposed to look on a page. And he realized he was basically, again, I'm not sure the artist's name. It might have been Toth, I'm not entirely sure. But he was doing Tarzan at the time. And people up until that time were drawing people as they actually existed, the proportions of people that exist within normal everyday life. And he said, something doesn't look right here. And he evaluated the entire thing and then elongated the body of the characters. And that became the new norm for everything that now we call superhero comics and has been for a long time. So again, the thing was that on this page, in the sequential art, these characters did not look exactly right. But when you elongated the body just slightly, then they looked right. So those characters were, in a sense, being drawn in a true manner to look as if they were exactly real, but they weren't exactly real proportions. But again, the whole thing is math. He was using it as, if I remember correctly, it was something like you take the head of the person and then you multiply that by 7, and that's the body. So that's what you get for, again, that's your mathematical equation, but you have to make it look like it's exactly right. And the same thing works, by the way, for manga. They do it in a different way. The elongation for manga is even more than that. And why this is, and if this has anything to do with the perception for, I don't know, Japanese people or Oriental people in general, I don't know. But the elongation is one head times 11, and then you get the entire body length, if I remember correctly. So it's even larger elongation of the body length than for North American comics. But again, the whole point is to make it look true to the reader so that it's a reflection of reality. And again, I wouldn't say always, but it also emphasizes the idea of power and the idea of movement, especially within the North American comics. And I would say, and this is just me, the ephemeral and more female qualities that you have within some manga and things like that with the elongation. So again, another example of this would be, and again, I don't remember the artist's name off the top of my head. He did a lot of comics that were science fiction and fantasy. Anyways, he came up with this technique of putting in something, putting in an L form within somewhere within the panel. Okay. So what he basically did was he was writing comics where there wasn't a whole lot of action. So as far as I know about what is going on within the art, he decided that, okay, in a lot of these panels where you don't have a lot of action, he put in what you would typically see in the background, like a formation of rocks or a house in the background or something like that, that would cause an L shape within usually the lower right or lower left of your panel. Now, why did he do this? Now, again, far as I've been able to tell from what I have gone through so far, is the fact that what he was trying to do was to trick the mind of the reader into thinking it was a picture while still thinking it was sequential art and put movement into it. Again, this entire thing, it was almost an optical illusion, and it's based upon mathematical equations, based upon the way that things actually look right. So again, what happens within that kind of art is that, let's say you have a panel within a comic, okay? Your panel borders are automatically the picture boundaries of that picture. But your brain, if you're someone who reads sequential art a lot, your brain is supposed to see each of those panels as movement from one panel to another, and the gutters are the movement that you get to see. Let me put something up in the background. I apologize. I'm just droning on, and I completely forget that I don't have anything up in the background. I'm sorry about that. Let's see here. It takes me a minute or two. See if I can find some more. Here's some atoms and stuff in the background. Here we go. But as I was saying, the point was that your mind is supposed to, if you're reading sequential art, go from one panel to another without noticing the panel boundaries and working with it to fill in the movement. But if you have a comic that doesn't have a lot of movement, then you're going to have to figure out a way to slow down the reader's perception of what is actually going on within the panel. And the way he did this was to put in a separate L bracket somewhere within the panel so that the mind of the reader would instinctually see within the panel borders another panel border to make it look like a picture. And so, again, instinctually convince the reader that this is a two-dimensional picture you're looking at. So you understand why there's not a lot of movement here, but at the same time, don't think about it too much, because you have to still think of it as sequential art outside of the larger panel boundary, which is the panel itself, so that you can think of it as moving from one panel to another. So again, these things are incredibly complex, and it's what sequential art is beautiful at. And it is one of the things that I love about sequential art. I love learning about sequential art. But again, the whole point is that you don't understand these things without understanding the natural flow of how people's eyes perceive what is going on and why they perceive it that way. And it all goes back to the actual definition of art. You have to divest yourself of this, as far as I'm concerned, nonsense that everything has to be interpreted subjectively. No, you interpret it objectively, and you realize that there is some subjective particles put in there at the same time. So you have to use both parts of your brain. If we go back to the terminology that people kept on trying to convince me of, you have to use both. And I would say more the rational part, but not all the rational part, and understand art in those ways. Now, why and how should they do this? Well, again, here's something that I ran across a little while ago. It's the idea, I'll tell you another quick story. The idea that in Japan, they had for thousands of years been able to produce carpenters who could make the most exquisite and delicate art with wood, as well as build amazing palaces, all these kinds of things. Why and how could they do this? Well, they could do it without even using blueprints, because they were trained from such a young age to actually understand all of the things that they needed to make this beautiful art out of wood, which sometimes was a building. And the thing was, again, they would grow up and not use blueprints ever. They would just make this stuff. So it was an instinctual learning process, but that's been dying out more and more. Why? Because of the fact that you now take a kid and you stick him into school. And so for the first, 12 years, at least 16 years, maybe, depends on how long they go into school, they don't learn about carpentry. They learn about other stuff. And then they become a carpenter after that. And by that time that they get to be a carpenter after school, it's too late. You can't understand all of these things in a sufficient lifetime without those 10, 15 years of learning it as a little child. It just doesn't work. So again, the reason why I'm telling that story is because as I had to suffer through when I was a kid, if I could actually have found someone who could teach me how to draw and to explain it in a way that I actually could understand, that wasn't subjective, to say, yeah, break it down into circles, break it down into squares, and then you can use this equation and understand it that way. And yeah, it probably would have been dry as unbuttered toast, but at the same time, it would have made so much more sense to me. And then you wouldn't have to do what most of these teachers, quote unquote teachers, are trying to do. They're trying to teach math in an instinctual way. Because again, a lot of art comes down to muscle memory and you understand these things instinctually, but they're trying to teach it in an instinctual way from the very get-go, from the beginning, without ever even recognizing or let alone teaching their students that, yeah, it's all based on math. So you don't have to do it you don't have to learn it in an instinctual way, even though it should become instinctual to you, like these carpenters in Japan that have existed for 1,000 years, but no longer exist. Learn it to be an instinctual thing and it becomes part of your second nature, but you don't have to do that from the very, very beginning. You don't have to say, I'm using this subjective tool in order to understand art. Anyways, that's my rant for the day, because the more and more I learn about sequential art, and the more and more I listen to people talk about how to produce art, the more and more I understand and appreciate some of what has been handed down to us by people like John Buscema, with his How to Make Comics the Marvel Way, or again, with Will Eisner, breaking down sequential art and going back to caveman times to, pull out every last ounce of what sequential art is good at. These are the kinds of things that I think we need to understand. These are the kinds of things I think we need to teach people if they really want to be artists that are going to be the great artists of the future. So I don't know. Tell me what you think about all of this in the comments, and I will go back to the first of the comments and give everybody a shout out here once more and see what kind of questions you have for me. Let's see. How's about we just take a moment or two to appreciate this Neil Adams art while I go and get my glasses so that I can actually read the screen. Give me a minute or two here, will you? Let's see. We have, I got to go back up to the top of the chat here to make sure we got everybody. So Vaz is here. I know he was been here from the beginning. So is Michael. Manny is here. How you doing, Manny? Warren the Archangel is here. Michael is here. Samuel is here. How's everybody doing tonight? We got a lot of people in the chat, 34 people now. So maybe I should disappear for a couple of weeks at a time more often. Let's see. Sound Engraver, of course, is here. How you doing, Sound Engraver? Melted Butter is here. How you doing? Scrolling down. Who else we got? Old Dirty Fatty. Okay, how you doing? All right, let's see. Heroin Burke is here. Jesse is here. How you doing, Jesse? Sound Engraver. Let's see what Sound Engraver. She might be disagreeing with me on my interpretation of art. Let's see. Sound Engraver says, I know what you mean by artist, but you are a writer and therefore you are an artist. Yes, I would say, yeah, but I'm not talking about artist as in someone who draws when I'm talking about art today. I guess I should have said that at first. Thank you very much for calling that out at the first, Sound Engraver. I wish I had read that comment earlier. Robert is here. How you doing? Let's see. Corrector Anna too. Let's see. How you doing? Robert Frey is here. Scrolling down. John, just plain old John is here. Let's see. Scrolling down. We'll see if we got any questions or anybody else popping up in the chat. Let's see. Scrolling down. Stress level is here. How you doing, stress level? Right. Stress level says art is subjective. No, it's not. Art is not subjective. You want to interpret art in a subjective way. Maybe that's possible, but I wouldn't say art is subjective. Let's see. Scrolling down. Warren says, I would say Robert E. Howard. I think he's talking to someone else. Let's see. Scrolling down. But I saw Robert E. Howard and I had to click on it because I love Robert E. Howard. Scrolling down. Yes. We have a good comment here from John. Says, classic art stands the test of time. It does indeed. Why? Because it appeals to everybody of every time. Because, again, going back to what is symmetrical, like the Fibonacci equation, all those kinds of things that appeal to human beings that tie into the actual concept of beauty. That's what I would have to say. Let's see. Scrolling down. There's a lot of cross chatter in the chat, which I love to see. I just have to go through it to make sure none of it is for me. Scrolling down. Samuel says, I think Samuel got himself a new avatar. That makes sense now that I think about it. The golden ratio is a mathematical equation. Yeah, exactly. The golden ratio. So scrolling down. Fabrizio is here. How you doing? Says, I am a programmer and an artist. This is 100% true. I approach both in the exact same way. Well, thank you very much. But again, I see very few people acknowledging these facts. Let's see. Scrolling down. Michael says, they let everyone get into art school after World War II, thinking that would stop another war from starting. But the secret to stopping war is to have a good economy and low unemployment. Well, I would say good art as well, because, tie people into the beautiful. And quite honestly, it is something to, I don't know, behold when you have a entire civilization full of beauty. It's something that you don't want to go to war over. I mean, you don't want to see it destroyed in war. Let me put it that way, right? So scrolling down. Yes, Robert is exactly right. Let's talk about music for a second. Music has a mathematical foundation. Exactly. I remember one of my friends getting into music for the first time, like playing music. And I said, well, it's all math. And they were like, no, it's not. And I'm going, yeah, it is. Music is just math. You realize that, right? And a lot of people, because they don't want to hear that, but it's true. And you have to acknowledge it. Anyways, scrolling down. John says, even babies prefer looking at symmetrical faces. Yep. That was one of the studies that I talked about a long time ago on my channel. Warren says, yeah, RJ, I kind of get it too. Art has to have objectivity and proportions in case of visual, and that's the base of harmony in music. Yep. See, and that's the thing. If that would be what they originally told me when I was trying to, draw, that would have been so much easier for me to understand what was going on. But no, it's all about feel this and feel that, and it really drove me away from art. Let's see. Robert has a good comment here. He says, I also view coding as art. It would be an art, Robert. I would say it would be. Let's see. Vaz says, you can have symmetry and yet be awful. Look at some modern art or AI. Well, again, that's the thing. That's why I say you can't just have it one way or another. Just as they keep saying on the other side, just use the left side of your brain and that's all you need. I would say, no, use the right side of your brain, but you can't just use the right side of your brain. And that's why I talked about having, the difference between straight and true. It's because, again, it has to be something based upon the beautiful, but you have to make it look right as well. And that does take some objective and subjective interpretation of the material and the way that people perceive things. And by the way, I have George Perez up in the background because George Perez to me is the pinnacle of almost the Greek which again we have Wonder Woman up, the Greek aspiration of rational art. Let's see. Scrolling down. John also says we are hardwired this way, not just us, but humanity. And I would say not just humanity, but also even animals. Again, the reason why young kids and young animals have big eyes and have that droopy face, it's because it tugs at something instinctual, not just within human beings, but also within animals. That's why dogs have big eyes. Why? Because it's a defense mechanism for the baby, for the cub, I guess you'd say, to actually get something from the mother. So again, it does affect them as well. And again, to have that face and that symmetry smeared, I would think even in the animal kingdom, with animals that typically have something like big eyes, like dogs, it would mean that animal is not going to last as long because it's not going to be treated the same by the mother of those animals. So yeah, I would say it's even more than just human beings. Let's see what Michael says here. The Korean language is all squares and circles because they're the most basic shapes, and the king wanted their language to be easy to write so all the poor people could be literate. Wow. Thank you very much for putting that in there, Michael. I had never known that. I can easily pick out, I was talking to some people, right? And I can easily pick out Korean. Partly because, well, I used to do Taekwondo when I was a kid, so there was Korean all over the place. So I know what Korean looks like. But some of my friends, right, they can't distinguish the difference between Korean and Chinese and Japanese. When they look at it written on a page, and to them it's all the same. To me, I can pick it out, and you're absolutely right. The circle and the square is what I look for, even though I had never actually thought about it directly for Korean language. And it's easy to pick out as Korean, even though I can't read Korean. Scrolling down. Let's see. Old Dirty Fatty says, all art is communication. You have to be able to clearly communicate in order to tell the story. Oh, you guys are, I should just, let you guys in the chat take over the entire stream because you're so much more concise than I am and getting straight to the point. Thank you very much. These comments are bang on. Let's see, scrolling down. Here we have Soundgraver talking about, yes, music. Art is math. Music is art. Music is physics. Physics is math. Yes. Thank you very much, Soundgraver. Thank you. I agree 100%. Stress Level also is here and says, it's the same way they say there's no right or wrong, but then demonize things that go against them as evil without wanting to say it. Yeah, exactly. But I mean, even for artists and people who don't go that far down the path, I still think that they do such a thing in their heads in a way that's, again, almost instinctual. Fabrizio says their souls are ugly, so they make ugly. Well, yes, indeed. That is one of the things I've talked about as well. Warren says art has subjective aspects to it, but it can't be entirely subject, as some people on the left would say. Yeah, agreed. Again, agree so wholeheartedly with so many of these comments that you guys have. Michael also says, if I tear you open wide, take a look inside. Are you pretty, or are you just pretty on the outside? Yeah, you have symmetry on the inside as well. Although that's a good point, Michael. Let's see. Scrolling down. Robert says, your response to art is subjective. That doesn't mean art itself is subjective. Exactly. Scrolling down. Michael says, yes, architecture is conservative art. Indeed. I think that would be a good way to put it. Samuel also says, we've had a lack of conservative art for a long time. It's been taken dominated by the postmoderns for a long time, to the point that there's a basis against it even by conservatives. Yeah, I guess that would answer one of the questions earlier on, and I'm glad you brought it up, Samuel. I think that's the problem with postmodern art to some extent, is because, yes, even postmodern art might be symmetrical and it might be according to, let's say, mathematical equations, but it does it in a way in order to deny the principles that it is itself using. That's what postmodern art specifically is about. It's to deny everything modern, is to deny everything rational, really. And so, yeah, what they're trying to do, again, is use reason to say everything is irrational, to use beauty to say everything is ugly, to use symmetry to say everything that you think has symmetry is just an illusion. So, yeah, that would be the answer to the question above that someone had asked about the difference between something just being symmetrical. It's not always beautiful. Tony, yes, Tony, I love this comment. Beauty is truth, and truth is beauty. Indeed, indeed. Let's see. Stress level says many conservatives also tend to disregard culture, like Matt Walsh. Yes, again, I think, quite honestly, stress level and everyone else, that's one of the big problems with the conservative movement right now. I think that if and when, I guess I should just say when, not if, but when this, we'll say, quote unquote, progressive hierarchy finally falls, it's going to be, if we look at history and take that as our pattern, it's going to be culture that actually pulls everything through, that keeps everything going, that makes sure that people are not taken down to a level of let's tear everything down and begin again, which is the whole point of what the progressives really want. They want everything torn down and just start again, and they think they can build utopia from doing that. No, if we look at let's say the fall of the Soviet Union, I talked about this a number of times on my channel. If you look at the Eastern Bloc countries, I think it was especially Romania, what they did was they realized that they just could not compete or actually dissent with the Soviet government. So what they did was, in an underground way, start creating as much culture as they possibly could, so that when it fell, because they knew it was going to fall, because it was just so inefficient, everything else, so that when it fell, that culture still existed and was able to be the backdrop of building the countries anew. That's exactly, excuse me, that's exactly what the history of some of the Balkan countries is, and it played out within the 80s and the 90s. Let's see. Warren also says beauty is the consequence of the truth, of the true and the good, of the truth and the good. Yes, but I would say the true and the good. But yes, oh, Gordon Goodbrother is here. How you doing, Gordon? Let's see. Scrolling down. I'm sure that I'm going to get to what I think is the bottom of the chat, and it's going to jump on me. Yep, there we go. All right. Let's see. I don't know if this comment is for me, Michael, but let's see. Clamp is a manga publisher notorious for having really elongated characters. Yeah. Again, what that signals within the types of art that they use within manga, I'm not entirely sure yet, but it is something that I want to understand and I want to know more and more about. And again, these are the types of rational questions that I think we need to be asking ourselves. Let's see. Yes. Oh, we have the introspectum. I think American heroic proportions are usually 8 heads, 7 bodies plus 1 head. Okay, there you go. Again, it is something that I always mean to look up for that artist, which again I think was a Tarzan artist, which came up with it originally. But those are the proportions. I think you're correct. Let's see, scrolling down. See who else has a comment here. Zach Dan, how you doing, Zach Dan? Zach Dan says, I think I heard somewhere that manga emphasizes the eyes because their culture expresses through eyes more than, say, with smiles and frowns than Westerners do. Well, you might have heard that from me because, yes, I've said that, and there have been other videos on the subject, certainly that I've run across, that say the exact same thing. It's the fact that, yes, for Easterners, they look at, when they're concentrating on facial expressions, they do concentrate on eyes, and Westerners concentrate on the mouth. Why that is, I'm not entirely sure, but yes, it has been expressed many a times that is what happens within the different cultures. Let's see. Warren says, it's been said 7 heads tall would be classic proportions and 8 heads heroic proportions. There you go. The basic of, again, like I say, the superhero structure until about now. And that's one of the things, because I remember when they were doing Vertigo, especially, I think it was Sandman. The person who did Sandman, I can't remember. Again, who the heck was it? He did, I don't remember his name off the top of my head. He did a story with Don Chin for Eclipse Comics before he actually went to do Sandman with DC. But yeah, the reason why those Vertigo comics, especially the Sandman, and I think that carried over to Constantine as well, and then started to bleed into the others. The reason why they looked completely different from the other DC comics was because they went back to original proportions for human beings rather than the heroic proportions. And it just threw everybody. And they say, this looks different. I don't understand why. And that was why. It was a concerted effort to do that. Let's see. Scrolling down. Sorry. I have to scroll up just a little bit because my chat jumped on me just a little bit. Robert says, I thought 3 apples were the correct proportions. I'm sorry, Robert. I'm not entirely sure what kind of mushrooms you're walking in and out of. That is a Smurf reference to everybody who thinks that I'm talking about different kinds of mushrooms. Scrolling down. Let's see here. Jesse, how you doing? Jesse says, I'll study an art. I'll start mechanic, then create. I'll study an art mechanic, then create a few things using that mechanic. When I create, I follow instinct, but it's instinct informed by what I've studied. People confuse instinct with subjectivity. Exactly. I didn't know exactly what you were trying to say there at first, but yes, that's what I was trying to express earlier on. Yeah, it becomes instinctual within an artist, but it doesn't mean instinct is the way, certainly not the best way, I would say, of trying to teach the darn thing to begin with. Let's see, scrolling down. Let's see here. John says, if art needs to be explained, then it's not art, but instead a visual aid. Yeah, well, that's what all modern art is right now. You have to write basically a thesis, a dissertation, and put it down next to the piece of quote unquote modern art so that people can understand what it is. Let's see. Tony says, RJ, any thoughts on Ed Piskor's situation? Yeah, well, I probably will do a video on that. I don't want to do a video anywhere close to now, but it might be this week. It might be like the end of this week, my Saturday video. It might be next week. It might be the week after. But I'm pretty sure I'm going to do a video on that. And it's not so much about Ed, but more about the conditions that he had to endure. Let's put it that way. So, I'll leave it there and hopefully address the subject in a better, more cogent way in an actual video where I have time to think about it. Scrolling down. Jesse says, RJ, you're a grown man with the internet. I think you should teach yourself to draw, even if you're only ever just proficient at it. Yeah, well, Jesse, I agree. But right now I am trying to write more and more. Although I do completely agree. Why? Because that's one of the things that Mike Barron told me. He said, yeah, you got to learn how to do, at the very least, basic proportions so that you can sketch out your panels just in case you need to for your artists. And yes, I take that advice from Mike Barron to heart, and it is something that I should do, and hopefully we'll get to do in a basic form at some point. But right now, I'm trying to ramp up my writing ability because I have so many stories in my head, but it's taking so long to get my books out. And that's why I started a new project with an artist. Excuse me. I started a new project with an artist that is going to be digital. And that way, we're doing is hopefully going to publish it either on the members section of my YouTube channel, or possibly, if it doesn't work there, then over on my Subscribestar, which I have like 5 people subscribed to. So I'm not entirely sure where I will do it, depending on what the best venue is for it. So what it is, it's I just talked about this on John's Longbox channel an hour ago. It's a new story. It's called Fade to Blue. It's basically film noir because it's going to be black and white. I want to get this story down as quickly as possible and get it out there to my artists so we can do the art as quickly as possible. We can get it out there. And basically there's going to be 3 8-page chapters for every quote unquote book, because again, it's digital. We might publish it in a hard copy at some point in the future. But anyway, and each of those chapters is going to be 3 chapters, and probably publish an 8-page chapter every 2 weeks. That is the hope, that we're going to do that. And so we can get those stories out there. And if I can do that, then I'm hoping to do that with probably more than 1, possibly 2, if I can really get going on the faster and faster writing, then 3, maybe 1 every week, not 1 every 2 weeks, but 1 every week. And then maybe 3 every 2 weeks, stuff like that. I'm hoping to do that. That's what I'm trying to do right now. I'm trying to write at the very least an 8-page chapter every week, which again, on top of trying to get all my books out and all that kind of stuff, is stretching me to my limit right now. But yeah, the whole point is that, once again, you learn by doing, and the only way I'm going to learn and become better at actually doing the stuff is to write more and more. And that means I need to get these stories out quicker and quicker. And that's why I'm going to go with some digital stuff for a little bit. Oh, John, you're here. How you doing, John? All right. John's Longbox popped by and says, Adam and I talked bad about you after you left us. I'll have to go back and curse you, John. We were talking on John's channel, if you weren't there, about an hour ago, about how no one hates John. He's just unhateable. He's too nice a guy. So scrolling down. Yes, John says, Mark, end of rant. End of RJ's rant. Yes, that's what I tend to do here. I tend to rant for about 20 minutes to a half an hour, and then I start to answer questions and interact. Tony says, RJ, are you a fan of Jack Kirby's Golden Age art? I am a fan of Jack Kirby's art for multiple reasons. And yes, that would include his Golden Age stuff, because and again, to me, everything is analysis, quite honestly. I'll probably talk about this on a video sometime in the future, but everything to me is analysis too. So to look at his early art, his Golden Age art, is to see the development of an art style by someone who wasn't actually taught art in a professional way, as far as I know, with what Jack Kirby himself has said. So it's something that's very heartening to me, to see someone who wasn't professionally trained in art to make such beautiful art and make such a beautiful impact on sequential art. So yeah, that's why I cherish early Jack Kirby stories, even though, when I go to read things that are Jack Kirby, sometimes I have to shake my head. And it's not because of the art, it's more the storytelling. Sometimes, like things like Devil Dinosaur, Moon Boy and Devil Dinosaur, and tried to read that, it's just like, oh, this is a slog sometimes. But again, the appreciation is there, 100%. Scrolling down. See what else we got here. Scrolling down. Let's see. Calliope, how you doing, Calliope? Good evening, RJ. No question, just saying hello. Well, hello to you, Calliope. Glad to have you here. And now my chat just jumped. Let's see, where did it go? Oh, here we are. All right, so let's see, scrolling down. Zach Dan says, I think this is a comment I must read. Art is like good food. I'll say good art is like good food. Some people appreciate some foods more than others, but bad food is generally not appreciated by anyone, and good food has wider appeal. Well, I'll add to that analogy, Zach Dan, and say this. Starving people will appreciate and eat just about anything. It doesn't matter how nasty the food is. And you see that in plenty parts of the world even today. And I think you can extend that analogy to art right now. People are appreciating ugly and nasty art. Why? Because they're starving for beauty. That's pretty much it. They're like a starving person that's eating garbage because and think it's the most delectable thing in the world because they're starving. So yeah, I agree, Zach. Let's see. Sound Engraver says good music is also good grammar. Now you're twisting the knife. Yeah, if I stuck the knife in people who think that art is subjective, that's twisting it, Sound Engraver. That, and I'm not saying that in a bad way. uh, yes, indeed. I love that. All right, scrolling down. Zach Dan says our brains, and dare I say it, souls love patterns. Yes, they do indeed. We are pattern recognizers. It's one of the things I've said for a long time on my channel. So I agree totally. Tony has a question, says, RJ, who do you think invented Savage Sword of Conan? I would say it's Robert E. Howard, quite honestly. But again, I don't know the entire furor that you're talking about here, Tony. So what the crux of the conflict between Robert E. Howard and Lord Dunsey, if I'm saying that correctly, because again, I just say things as they appear in my head, and I never get them right. I don't know the crux of the entire dispute there, but I would say it's Howard, just off the top of my head, because I always have to have an opinion on something. So let's see. Scrolling down, Sound Engraver also says, composing now while listening to this. Okay, well, that's good to know. Unfortunately, I'm not myself the most grammatically correct, nor, let's say, symmetrical in my pattern of speech. Unfortunately, again, it's one of those things that I wish I was better at. My charisma is my dump stat, I always say. I wish I had better charisma, which would make me a more eloquent speaker, which I'm not. So how that you're composing with me fumbling and bumbling over all of these comments, Sound Engraver, you must have exceptional concentration. Let's put it that way. Let's see. Film Talk, how you doing? Says, I like art that makes sense. Yeah. And again, there is making sense in a rational way, and there's making sense in an instinctual way as well. And again, I think that any art, and especially any sequential art, needs to fire on all cylinders by doing both at the same time. Oh, we have Mutt in the chat. How you doing, Mutt? Mutt says, I think comic art is the most diverse and beautiful form of storytelling in human history. Nothing compares to it. It can be as awesome as the skill and imagination of the artist. Well, again, Mutt, I would totally agree with that statement. I just have fallen in love again with sequential art over the last number of years when I have learned to, draw up scripts for sequential art, and working with artists, it has given me so much more appreciation of sequential art. And I want to spend more and more of my time learning about sequential art and the beauty of it. Because like you, I believe that it is the most beautiful form of storytelling. Yes. Film Talk also says, George Perez's Wonder Woman is some of my favorite art to look at. Yes, indeed. I think I might be getting to the bottom of this chat. I'm not entirely sure. So let me go up to see if I can put some more art on the background. Let's see. We had Adams. Let's put some covers up in the background. Oh, wait a second here. I think we have some Jusku here if we want to talk about symmetrical. Here we go. Let's see. I'll go back to the comments now. Where was I? Now I got to scroll up. My apologies. I am nowhere near the end of the chat. Here we go. Let's see. Scrolling back down. Calliope says, RJ, I was watching a video where the maker's premise was that the reason why there is such hatred for beauty is not jealousy, but to deny all of us the aspiration that beauty inspires. Do you agree? Yes, I totally, completely agree. I wouldn't say that it is devoid of jealousy. I would say that's certainly part of it in there. But yes, the quote unquote progressive way that they want to do things is to destroy beauty because, again, it destroys your ability to be an independent thinker and to be someone who can aspire to beauty and goodness and all those kinds of things. Let's see. Warren says Wonder Woman is the representation of female perfection. It's made by a triangular torso and a circle for the hips and thighs. Okay. If I ever get my button gear and learn how to draw, I will come back, I'm sure, to Wonder Woman and try that, Warren. Let's see. Scrolling down. John also says, interesting comment. It says, consciousness is an art unto itself. I would have to think more on that before I agreed with that. But I don't see any problem with it off the top of my head. Let's see. Scrolling down. Warren also says, in the 40s, she was too curved, delicate, and sexualized. It fits Storm and Rogue more than Wonder Woman. Okay. Let's see. And again, Jesse reiterates the point that was made earlier, and I agree. People get instinct and subjectivity confused. Yes, indeed. And I will leave that up there just for a moment because that is important. Warren here talking more about Wonder Woman says, gladly, Linda Carter took the role, and for Miss Universe, you'll see how most competition winners have these shapes and proportions as Wonder Woman. Okay. All right. I have not noticed that before, but good to something to stick in my brain. Let's see. Elijah. Yes, Elijah says the root of the word utopia means no place. Yes, indeed it does. It is a fictional place. It is always a fictional place. Jesse says, RJ, I've been trying to condense my love of creating art into a sentence so I can share it, and I keep failing. Please give it another try now that you're grown up and have the internet. I believe in you. Again, Jesse, I would love to do so if I have the time. And we'll say when I have the time. But right now, I need to concentrate on becoming a better writer to actually write scripts in a faster way so that I can work with sequential artists. And we'll move on from there. Let's see. Elijah says, RJ, have you read Wonder Woman issues drawn by Ross and Drew? I don't know off the top of my head. I couldn't say. Let's see. Quite honestly, I couldn't say off the top of my head, Elijah. I would have to Google his name and look at his art. I'm so visual, quite honestly, that I probably would recognize whether I would or would not have done so from the pictures, but I can't. I am so inert when it comes to navigating this entire thing that I have trouble speaking and going to the chat at once to open another browser and to look up his name. It's a little too much for me. I would have to leave you all in silence for a minute or two, and I don't want to do that. Let's see. Scrolling down. Again. Let's see. Mutt says, I've heard manga style has big eyes because the origin of the art from form was to mimic Mickey Mouse and the other Disney character styles, and then that style was taught as a system to crank out tons of art fast. Well, again, I don't know the validity of that statement, Mutt, or not, but I did hear something similar to that as well. Let's see. Scrolling down. Sound of Graver says, I wasn't thinking Smurfs when you made that comment. Yeah, that's 3 apples high. He was talking about Smurfs. Obviously, he was talking about Smurfs, right? That's why I was talking about mushrooms, because that's where the Smurfs live, in the mushrooms. Let's see. Scrolling down. Robert says, Sound Graver, Smurfs are 3 apples tall. Exactly. After I wrote it, I realized it could be misinterpreted. Let's see. Scrolling down. Dan, how you doing, Dan? Dan says, actually, according to How to Draw the Marvel Way, hero figures should be 8 3/4 heads tall. But if you look at the classics like Michelangelo, he used 8 3/4. Okay. All right. I did not know that. It's been so long. I have gone through how to draw comics the Marvel way probably a year ago, but I didn't read it from cover to cover. Well, so I'll have to look that up again, Dan. Thank you very much for letting us know that. Let's see. Scrolling down. I'm going to see if I can get to the end of the chat because we've gone over our hour. I don't like to keep everybody more than an hour, but I will get to the end of the chat first. Let's see. Scrolling down. Scrolling down. Let's see. Tony says, RJ, are you a fan? Am I a fan of the Primal series? I like, honestly, I think I mentioned this last week in the chat or 2 weeks ago or something like that, but I haven't had a TV in my house for more than 20 years now. So I don't watch a whole lot of television, and it translates onto, yes, I can watch television on the computer. I just don't do it a lot. So it looks like a series that I would enjoy and that I want to get to at some point, but I haven't actually watched the entire, I've watched bits and pieces of it. I've seen bits and pieces of it, but I haven't watched the entire thing. So I couldn't answer that question, Tony. But yeah, it's on my to watch list. But again, I have very little time right now, and what little time I have left to myself, usually I reserve that for writing new scripts. Let's see. Scrolling down. And yes, oh, look here. Sound Engraver has a $2 super chat. Thank you very much. She says, thanks for these streams. Long live art analysis. Thank you very much, Sound Engraver. Always. I forgot to give Sound Engraver a shout out at the beginning. Yes, if you want to hear some of the, well, say art analysis in a different fashion, but the same vein as me, I would say, if I can be so bold, Sound Engraver, click on Sound Engraver's icon and go on over to her channel. She has some great stuff on YouTube. Let's see. Samuel says, the Fourth Age updates on the shipping for the books. Oh yeah, updates. So we are shipping the Valiant Heroes right now, although I'm hesitant to go full bore on the shipping right now because I only published I forgot to publish on the Indiegogo site the comment saying, everybody update your addresses now, please, because we're shipping. But I wanted to give anybody who had to change their shipping address the time to do that before I shipped out their book. But I am shipping some now for basically people I know that have already changed their address, or people I know where their addresses is and things like that. So we have started shipping for the Valiant Heroes. And again, I'm going to ramp that up in the next over the next week. So I think 2 weeks, I've given everybody enough time. If you haven't changed your address, then sorry, it's not on me. Yeah, after I have put that out there and it has gone to everybody's email. So yeah, we are shipping the Valiant Heroes right now, and we will ramp that up to a much faster pace within the next week. On Crom the Destroyer, here's the thing about Crom the Destroyer. I don't think we're going to have Crom the Destroyer ready anytime soon. Unfortunately, I just have to say that out and out. We're going to have it done, but I'm having Nick Axe do both chapter 2 and 3 because I couldn't find an artist equal to either Jim or Nick up to their quality to do chapter 3. So I had to get Nick to do chapter 3 as well. That having been said, at the same time, Jim is having a rough spot within his normal everyday life, and he still has about 10 pages left to finish on chapter 1. So I'm trying to give Jim as much leeway as possible to finish those last 10 pages of chapter 1, which is basically the amount of time which Nick is going to take to finish the next. I think he has about 5 pages left of chapter 2 and then start on chapter 3. So again, it's because I have beautiful, exquisite artists and we're doing beautiful, exquisite art for that book for all of the chapters. I don't want to rob anybody of that. Unfortunately, it's just that art takes a long time. So that's what's up with Crom the Destroyer. But again, we'll be hopefully, if you've ordered the Valiant Heroes, it will be coming to you in the mail in the near future. And you will receive an email when it has gone into the mail so that you can look for it yourself. Here we go. Someone answering my question. I do not know how to pronounce your name for the life of me. Is it Icelandic? Let's see. Borvoji. I have no idea. I guess the Tarzan artist you're talking about is Hogarth. Hogarth, but Raymond did the heroic proportions in Flash Gordon before him. Right. I could be. Again, I have to look it up. And I apologize for slaughtering your name when I said it, dear sir, or madam, whatever the case may be. Let's see. Scrolling down. Samuel goes, oh no, a food art analogy. Professor Geek has entered the chat. Let's see. Manny is here. Manny says, hey, I just wanted to let you know I really enjoy your last video you did about the heroes leaving the city for the small towns. It reminded me of the show Stargirl, Superman, and Lois. Yeah, and someone pointed out in the comments of that video, and I hadn't even thought about this, but if because someone had said in the comments, I don't think heroes could work in a small town or a small place, and then someone pointed out, excuse me, go to manga and every second hero, if not almost all of the heroes, are set in somewhere else than a large city. So yeah, it works all the time, especially in things like isekai and stuff like that. So it can work, certainly. Scrolling down. I got to put this up here. Zach Dan says, I love Professor Geek, and Sound Engraver says, I love Professor Geek too. She loves Professor Geek in a totally different way than Zach Dan. However, because Sound Engraver is married to Professor Geek, if you don't know. So let's see. Scrolling down. Scrolling down. See if we're getting to the bottom of the chatters. Yeah, it just jumped on me. So let's see. Elijah is here again and says, RJ, have you seen the sci-fi film from the 20s called Metropolis? Well, I have it bookmarked on YouTube to watch it because someone had colorized it and put it on YouTube. But again, apart from seeing parts of it before, I have not watched the entire thing all the way through. Again, it is on my to watch list. It is on literally on my watch later list on YouTube. Let's see. Scrolling down. John says, LOL, why does RJ keep doing that? I think I'm getting close to the bottom. Stop tempting fate. Because literally my little bar on the side says, oh, look, you're at the bottom. And then I hit the last comment and it jumps like 20 comments. And apparently I'm not even anywhere close to the bottom. I'm so far away from the bottom that it's not even showing me how close I am with the entire chat. Let's see. So I'm not trying to tempt fate. I'm trying to work as best I can with what I got here. Let's see. Scrolling down, Mutt says, great stream. Thanks for reading my comments. Always fun to listen. Well, thank you very much for showing up in the chat, Mutt. Scrolling down. Yes, he'll never get to the end of the chat, says Michael. Yeah, I'll try. Let's see. Scrolling down. You want me to go faster? I think that's what the general consensus is. Samuel says, subjectivity has more to do with individual perceptions. Objectivity has to do more with seeing what a subject actually is and isn't. Indeed, I quite agree. That is one way to put it. Samuel, those who dismiss objectivity tend to be just forcing their own subjective experience on everyone else. Yep. As we see around us today, more and more. Scrolling down. See, let's see what else we got here. Zach Dan says, is there a way to update the address without changing it to let you know I haven't? Is there any way to update the address without changing it to let you know I haven't moved? Well, Zach Dan, like I said, it won't get it out any faster because I don't think there's a way to do that. But your book will be in the mail within the next couple of weeks. So don't worry. We're ramping up our pace with putting those out there. Scrolling down. Again, I think I'm getting to the bottom of the chat. Let's see. Scrolling down. What in the world? I have no idea what this comment means. Which English would make use of the Greek words for different kinds of love? I'm not entirely sure what you guys are talking about, but yes, there are at least 3 different Greek words for love. And that is a can of worms in itself, especially if you consider the usages, knowing ancient Greek and how they've been used, especially within the ancient as compared to medieval periods. But I'm not getting into that because that would take me another hour. Let's see, scrolling down. Tony says, RJ, are you a fan of the Grendel series? Grendel series. No, I'll just put that straight out there. No, I'm not. I've never been. I always used to pick it up like in the 80s, in the 90s in the comic store. And I always thought this looks spectacular and I would love the art. And then I would start to read it and go, yeah, that's not for me. And I would put it back down. So no. Scrolling down. Let's see if we can get anywhere close to the bottom. And we are at the bottom of the chat. Finally, I did get to the bottom. It's been an hour and 21 minutes. So there. So yeah, Jazak Dan. Look, I can get to the bottom of the chat. Anyways, thank you very much, everyone. We got 35 people in the chat right now. Holy Moses. Thank you, everyone, for finally. I was reading I was reading a comment as I was speaking. See how my brain works. Thank you, everyone, for showing up in the chat and for listening to me rant. I was a bit mumbly today, to say the least, because I just came off a live stream with John's Long Box, so tend to get a bit tongue-tied after having to speak for about 2 hours. So again, I apologize for that. I want to thank everyone for listening to me rant today. I want to do more about this kind of sequential art and basically the interpretation of sequential art. Hopefully I will have more time to do so in the future. But again, that all depends on how much I can get done within my normal everyday work of trying to get more and more scripts out there. So everybody in the chat and who has ordered my books can get more and more stories from the Fourth Age, because I have so many stories right now that I want to tell. I literally have 6 scripts on the go, 6 scripts on the go that I don't even have artists for, that I have no idea when they're going to get produced. But like I said, if I can actually get these scripts into formats which can be, easily interpreted by new artists, then we can get more and more stories out there, which is what I hopefully am going to do within the next year, ramp up my production of things getting out to people, which will be digital as well as the normal Indiegogo campaigns, which right now is about 2 per year. So I want to again, thank everyone for showing up in the chat and being here tonight to listen to me rant. I will see you all next week. I think we will be doing another comic book team up here on my channel next week, as well as my normal, of course, Saturday video. And I will see you all in the chat. Thank you once again for showing up, and I'll leave you with the short trailer for Crom the Destroyer. Everyone, have a beautiful evening. I'll see you later. Bye.
No matter how many wars you fight, no matter how much blood you shed, no matter how much rage you loose, no matter how many demons you face, no matter how many companions you lose, no matter if our kingdom falls, I know that you will return to me in honor.